Hey guys, Lord Naren White here, the Holy Ghost, the one true God. Back with you with the next video in my series, Great Expectations. Without further ado, returning to Great Expectations. Then why go into subjects, old chap, which, as betwixt two sec, must be for ever unnecessary? Excuse me, this is Joe's voice. There's subjects enough as betwixt two sec, without unnecessary ones. Lord, to think of your poor sister and her rampages. And don't you remember Tickler? I do indeed, Joe. Looky here, old chap, said Joe. I done what I could to keep you and Tickler and sunders, but my power were not always fully equal to my inclinations. For when your poor sister had a mind to drop into you, it were not so much, said Joe, in his favorite argumentative way, that she dropped into me too, if I put myself in opposition to her, but that she dropped into you always heavier for it. I noticed that. It ain't a grab at a man's whisker, not yet a shake or two of a man, to which your sister was quite welcome. That you'd put a man off from getting a little child out of punishment. But when that little child is dropped into heavier for that grab of whisker or shaking, then that man naturally up and says to himself, where is the good as you are a-doing? I grant you I see the arm, says the man, but I don't see the good. I call upon you, sir, therefore to find out the good. The man says, I observed, as Joe waited for me to speak. The man says, Joe assented. Is he right, that man? Dear Joe, he is always right. Well, old chap, said Joe, then abide by your words. If he's always right, which in general he's more likely wrong, he's right when he says this. Supposing ever you kept any little matter to yourself, when you was a little child, you kept it mostly because you knowed as J. Gargery's power to part you, and Tickler in sunders, were not fully equal to his inclinations. Therefore, think no more of it as betwixt two sec, and do not let us pass remarks upon unnecessary subjects. Biddy give herself a deal of trouble with me afore I left, for I am almost awful dull. As I should view it in this light, and viewing it in this light, as I should so put it. Both of which, said Joe, quite charmed with his logical arrangement. Being done, now this to you a true friend, say, namely, you mustn't go overdoing on it, but you must have your supper, and your wine and water, and you must be put betwixt the sheets. The delicacy with which Joe dismissed this theme, and the sweet tact and kindness with which Biddy, who, with her woman's wit, had found out so soon, had prepared him for it, made a deep impression on my mind. But whether Joe knew how poor I was, and how great my expectations had all dissolved, like our own marsh mist before the sun, I could not understand. Another thing in Joe that I could not understand when it first began to develop itself, but which soon arrived at a solid for comprehension of, was this. As I became stronger and better, Joe became a little less easy with me. In my weakness and entire dependence on him, the dear fellow had fallen into the old tone, and called me by the old names, the dear old Pip, old chap, that now were music in my ears. I, too, had fallen into the old ways, only happy and thankful that he let me. But imperceptibly, though, I held by them fast. Joe's hold upon me began to slacken, and whereas I wondered at this at first, I soon began to fault and understand the cause of it was in me, and that the fault of it was all mine. Ah, had I given Joe no reason to doubt my constancy, and to think that in prosperity I should grow cold to him and cast him off, Had I given Joe's innocent heart no cause to feel instinctively that as I got stronger, his hold upon me would be weaker, and that he had better loosen it in time and let me go before I plucked myself away. It was on the third or fourth occasion of my going out walking in the temple gardens, leaning on Joe's arm, that I saw this change in him very plainly. We had been sitting in the bright, warm sunlight, looking at the river, and I chanced to say as we got up, "See, Joe, I can walk quite strongly. Now, you shall see me walk back by myself." "Which do not overdo it, Pip," said Joe. "But I shall be happy for to see you able, sir." The last word grated on me, but how could I remonstrate? I walked no further than the gate of the gardens, and then pretended to be weaker than I was, and asked Joe for his arm. Joe gave it to me, but was thoughtful. I, for my part, was thoughtful too, for how best to check this growing change in Joe was a great perplexity to my remorseful thoughts, that I was ashamed to tell him exactly how I was placed, and what I had come down to do. I do not seek to conceal, but I hope my reluctance was not quite an unworthy one. He would want to help me out of his little savings. I knew that he ought not to help me, and that I must not suffer him to do it. It was a thoughtful evening with both of us, but before we went to bed, I had resolved that I would wait over for tomorrow being Sunday, and would begin my new course with the new week. On Monday morning, I would speak to Joe about this change. I would lay aside this last vestige of reserve. I would tell him what I had in my thoughts, that secondly not yet arrived at, and why I had not decided to go out to Herbert, and then the change would be conquered forever. As I cleared, Joe cleared, and it seemed as though he had sympathetically arrived at a resolution too. We had a quiet day on the Sunday, as we rode out into the country, and then walked in the fields. "I feel thankful that I have been ill, Joe," I said. "Dear old Pip, old chap, you almost come round, sir." "It has been a memorable time for me, Joe." "Likewise for myself, sir," Joe returned. "We have had a time together, Joe, that I can never forget. There were days once, I know, that I did for a while forget, but I never shall forget these." "Pip," said Joe, appearing a little hurried and troubled, "there has been larks, and, dear sir, what have been betwixt us have been." At night, when I had gone to bed, Joe came into my room as he had done all through my recovery. He asked me if I felt sure that I was doing as well in the morning. "Yes, dear Joe, quite." "And are always a-getting stronger, old chap?" "Yes, dear Joe, steadily." Joe patted the coverlet on my shoulder with his great good hand, and said, in what I thought a husky voice, "Good night." When I got up in the morning, refreshed and stronger yet, I was full of my resolution to tell Joe all, without delay. I would tell him before breakfast. I would dress at once and go to his room and surprise him, for it was the first day I had been up early. I went to his room, and he was not there. Not only was he not there, but his box was gone. I hurried then to the breakfast table, and on it found a letter. These were its brief contents. "Not wishful to intrude, I have departed, for you are well again, dear Pip, and will do better without Joe. P.S. Ever the best of friends." We'll go ahead and stop there for this week. As usual, I want to say thank you for watching, and I hope you enjoyed. Please like, comment, and subscribe, as it greatly helps the channel. Light be with you all. Take care, And thanks again.